On the evening of June 24, 2018, what should have been a simple family celebration in Rosedale, Maryland turned into the beginning of a nightmare. Cindy Berdina Testerman, 61 years old, was supposed to be celebrating her birthday with the people who loved her, but when her son Robert could not reach her, his worry quickly turned into panic. He drove to her house on Roseland Avenue, stepped inside, and almost immediately sensed that something was terribly wrong. There was a bad smell in the home. A shotgun had been left out on the kitchen table, and when he looked farther inside, he realized his mother was lying on the kitchen floor. Moments later, he called 911 and told dispatch the words, "No son should ever have to say." He believed his mother had been assaulted or murdered.
What was the address of the emergency?
My mother is dead, and I came over to check on her. She is lying on the floor in the kitchen. I believe she was either assaulted or murdered.
When officers arrived, they treated the house as an active and dangerous scene. They cleared the rooms carefully, aware that a weapon was inside and that the killer could still be nearby. What they found in the kitchen confirmed Robert's worst fears.
Didn't think that my fears that had crept into my brain while I was driving over, I didn't expect any of that to be real. Like, hey, I wonder what's happening here. What's the worst that it could be? I never imagined that it could actually be the worst.
His mother, Cindy, was dead at the scene, and investigators later determined that she had been killed with an edged weapon, suffering fatal trauma to her upper body.
Stopped right in the middle of the living room, and I called to her, and I was like, Mom? Mom? And there was no response. And so I panicked. Like, I turned around, I walked back out to the front porch, and I immediately called 911.
Straight ahead to the right. I haven't even gone into the kitchen yet.
You said there's a gun in there?
There's a gun. She has 2 shotguns and a handgun. There is a shotgun sitting on her kitchen table. From the distance that I was away from her, it looked like it was red around her neck.
All right. Is there any reason why a shotgun would be out?
I do not know.
The home looked ransacked, drawers had been disturbed, valuables were missing, and her 2013 Honda Accord was gone from the garage, making the case look at first like a robbery that had turned deadly. But while detectives were still trying to understand who would kill a woman like Cindy, the case took an even darker turn. Neighbors began mentioning another woman who lived just across the street, Judy Elizabeth Slebzak, 66 years old, and no one seemed to have seen her in some time. The stories people gave did not line up. Some said she was in rehab. Others said they had seen her recently. And the more police asked questions, the more uneasy the whole neighborhood became. What had started as one murder investigation was suddenly expanding into something far more sinister, because now detectives had to ask whether Cindy had been killed for some personal reason, or whether she had simply gotten too close to another secret already hiding across the street.
When's the last time you saw her? Or talked to her?
The last time I talked to her, Wednesday maybe. We traded she sent me a text on Friday that I didn't respond.
The first real break came from Cindy's home surveillance footage, which showed an unfamiliar young man coming and going from her house and later driving away in her missing car. Cindy's son did not recognize him, but detectives now knew they were looking for a white male in his late 20s or early 30s who seemed comfortable enough around Cindy to approach her home without hesitation. Then, when Cindy's stolen car was located, officers found that it had already been sold to another family, who insisted they had bought it from a man they knew only by a nickname.
Man sold this car to me and my husband. I didn't steal anything. I didn't know the car was stolen. I wouldn't buy no stolen car.
That lead alone was not enough, but it pushed detectives toward the person who would soon become the center of both cases. Ryan Michael McGuire, Judy's 32-year-old stepson. As police learned more about Ryan, the picture became much clearer and much more horrifying. He had been staying in Judy's home, and according to investigators, he had already killed her weeks earlier. Prosecutors later said he intentionally caused Judy Slebzak's overdose in May 2018, hid her body inside a cedar chest in her own home, and then continued using her house, her car, and her belongings while telling neighbors she was away in rehab. During that time, police believe he was selling off property from the house to support his drug habit. Cindy, who knew Judy and kept asking questions about where she had gone, began threatening the lie he was living in. And according to prosecutors, that was enough to make Ryan decide that Cindy had to die too. The final collapse of his scheme came after detectives traced activity on Cindy's stolen credit cards. Her son had checked the accounts and found recent purchases, including transactions that led police to a motel. There, officers discovered that Ryan had been staying with his girlfriend and had both women's property in his possession. Inside the room were Cindy's checkbook, financial documents belonging to Judy, jewelry, new shoes, and a knife, along with shoes stained with blood that later matched Cindy's DNA. By then, detectives no longer had a theory. They had their suspect. And then came the moment that made the entire case even more disturbing. During interrogation, Ryan did not need much pressure to start talking. In fact, according to investigators, he was disturbingly calm.
You said you've been staying at the motel there?
Yeah, I stayed there for a couple of days.
Okay. What about before that?
I've been staying with that lady.
Who's that?
The huge car I had.
Judy.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your relationship to her?
She's like my stepmom or something like that.
Okay. She let you use the car and everything?
Yeah.
All right, nice lady. Where's she at these days?
Yeah, listen. I need a cigarette. I'm not saying nothing else. Tell you a cigarette.
Okay.
After asking for a cigarette, he admitted that Judy was dead too and offered to tell police where her body was.
I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know. She's gone too. She's dead too. Just to let you know, she's dead too. You're gonna charge me with that one too. So I'll tell you where she's at as soon as I get a cigarette.
All right, man.
I know I'm here for the one across the street.
What's that?
I'm here for what? Across the street.
Yeah, man.
Detectives then went to Judy's home and found her remains hidden exactly where he said they would be, in the cedar chest inside the house. What had looked like one brutal murder was now confirmed to be a double homicide, and the truth was even worse than detectives had feared. Cindy had not been the beginning of the story. She had been the second victim. In November 2019, Ryan McGuire pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, admitting that he had intentionally caused Judy's overdose and later stabbed Cindy to death. Prosecutors argued that he killed Judy for money and then killed Cindy because she kept asking questions that threatened to expose him. On December 12, 2019, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He is now serving that sentence in Maryland. What makes this case so haunting is how ordinary it must have looked from the outside for so long. One woman was simply gone, and neighbors were given an explanation. Another woman cared enough to keep asking questions, and for that, she lost her life. Cindy Testerman and Judy Slebzak were both older women living quiet lives in the same neighborhood, and yet the truth hidden behind those doors was something no one around them could have imagined. It took a son's terrible discovery, a home camera, and a killer arrogant enough to believe he could keep lying for it all to finally come apart. But the next clip, however, shows a very different kind of mystery. One that happened inside a quiet home late at night. The video was posted by a woman named Akina. Since becoming a mother, she has regularly shared videos on her TikTok account, Akija Boni, featuring her young son. Through these clips, she tries to capture every important moment in the life of her baby boy, Panko. From the day he was born to the moment he received his first play area, Akina has documented many milestones in her son's early life. But not every moment she experiences ends up online, and there is a reason for that. Early in the morning on January 29, 2024, at around 2:30 a.m., Akina suddenly woke up to something unusual happening inside her bedroom. Fortunately, little Panko remained asleep and didn't seem to notice anything at all. What happened next, however, was deeply unsettling. And the most disturbing part is that the entire moment was captured on video. It's not surprising that Akina hesitated before deciding to share this recording publicly. Not only does the bedroom door appear to open and close on its own, but there is another detail that makes the situation even more disturbing. Akina later explained that at that exact moment, she believed she saw a silhouette standing in the doorway, one that looked exactly like her husband. The strange part is that he wasn't supposed to be home yet. According to her, there were still several hours before he was scheduled to return from work, yet in that moment, she felt as though he was already there, silently standing in the doorway and watching her. However, when looking at the video itself, no one can actually be seen. If you listen closely though, you can hear the home security system activating, as if someone had just entered the house. After hearing the alarm, Akina leaves the bedroom to turn it off and begins searching the house, assuming that her husband must have come home earlier than expected and simply walked into another room. But from that point on, the situation only becomes stranger. A short while later, she returns to the bedroom and her behavior seems noticeably different. She pauses in the doorway, standing completely still for a moment before slowly walking inside and sitting down with a tense expression on her face. For a brief second, it almost looks as if she isn't entirely herself anymore. Later, however, she explained that she had simply gone into shock. When she went downstairs to check the house, she discovered that none of the lights were on and the front door was still locked. In other words, her husband had never come home at all. Shaken and confused, she returned to the bedroom and tried to understand what had just happened. If her husband wasn't there, then who, or what, had she seen standing in the doorway? Since that night, Akina says she has replayed the moment in her mind countless times. Until she finds a clear explanation, the video will remain publicly available on her page. She continues to post everyday moments with Panko as she always has, but this particular incident remains unexplained to this day. Now, while Akina's video remains unexplained, the next case shows how security cameras can capture the final moments before something far more tragic unfolds. On the night of August 28, 2020, 22-year-old Leslie Palacio went out in Las Vegas with someone her family had known for years, Eric Rangel Ibarra, a 25-year-old family friend who, on paper, did not look like a stranger or an obvious threat. The two started their night at the Longhorn Casino in East Las Vegas, where surveillance cameras captured them walking in together just before midnight, having dinner, drinking, and spending what looked like an ordinary night out. Later, they moved on to other bars, continuing to drink into the early morning hours before finally arriving at Eric's home shortly before sunrise. That final stretch of the night would become the last time Leslie was ever seen alive. By the time they pulled up to the house, Leslie was visibly affected by the alcohol, and footage later reviewed by investigators showed Eric helping her out of the truck and into the home. At first, nothing in the video suggests what is about to happen. It looks like the kind of moment people regret only because of the hangover the next morning. But about an hour later, that same camera captured something entirely different. A body being dragged out of the house.
Prosecutors say video from the morning of August 29th shows 25-year-old Eric Rangel Ibarra helping 22-year-old Leslie Palacio, seen here alive, get out of his truck and into the house. An hour later, in video we've blurred due to its graphic nature, the same camera catches Rangel Ibarra and another man, who prosecutors believe is his father, 46-year-old Jose Rangel, dragging a lifeless body from the home and into that same truck. Minutes after, the truck drives off, leaving Rangel hosing off the walkway.
In that instant, what had begun as a missing person case quietly became a homicide investigation. Leslie's family knew something was wrong long before police fully caught up to it. When she failed to come home, her mother and sisters tried desperately to reach her. They called, they texted, they went to the Rangel home looking for answers. According to reporting and court testimony, one of the last messages sent from Leslie's phone simply said that she needed to tell her sister something, but no explanation ever followed. Her family pushed for help, but valuable time was lost. As investigators later pieced together the timeline, they realized that while Leslie's family was trying to find her, Eric and his father had already disappeared. When detectives searched the Rangel home, they found signs that someone had tried to clean up. There were cleaning supplies, latex gloves, stained cloths, dark spots on a mattress in Eric's room, and blood evidence in multiple areas of the house. A fitted sheet was missing, and investigators concluded that the scene had been disturbed in a way that strongly suggested an attempt to remove evidence rather than preserve it. It was no longer just a question of where Leslie had gone. The evidence pointed to the far darker possibility that she had died inside that house and that the people inside it had tried to make her disappearance look like something else. Then came one of the most disturbing details in the entire case. A friend of Eric's later told police that Eric had called him from a different phone and asked for help bringing gasoline because he did not want to be seen on camera. When the friend questioned him, Eric allegedly admitted the reason in chillingly direct terms, saying that he had killed someone and that she's dead in the backseat of my truck right now. That statement, combined with the surveillance footage and the physical evidence inside the house, gave investigators a horrifying picture of what had likely happened in those early morning hours. On September 9, 2020, Leslie's body was found in Moapa Valley, near Valley of Fire State Park, hidden off a dirt road behind brush in the desert about 60 miles northeast of Las Vegas. The heat and conditions had badly damaged the remains, and authorities were unable to determine an exact cause of death. Even so, the circumstances surrounding the disposal of her body only deepened the cruelty of the case. Leslie had been a nursing student, just months away from graduating, with her life moving forward. Instead, her family was forced to mourn her, while the man accused of killing her had vanished across the border. Eric's father, Jose Rangel, eventually resurfaced first. In January 2021, he turned himself in at the U.S.-Mexico border. He later admitted helping move Leslie's body and pleaded guilty to destroying evidence and being an accessory to murder. In August 2021, he was sentenced to 2 years in jail, though that sentence drew heavy criticism because many felt the punishment did not come close to matching the gravity of what he had done. The family publicly spoke out, saying that helping dump a young woman's body and clean up a murder scene should never have been treated so lightly. But the larger question remained unanswered for years. Where was Eric Rangel Ibarra? For a long time, he seemed to have disappeared. Investigators believed he had fled to Mexico, and there were scattered reports that he had been seen in different states there, but nothing solid was enough to bring him back.
We always think about her all the time. Like, there's not a day, that goes by that we don't. Everything reminds us of bring yourself in, because there's no way of hiding out anymore. You can't hide forever and just, pay for what you did, because we're not gonna stop until we get justice.
Leslie's family kept speaking publicly, kept pushing, and kept repeating the same message, that they would not stop until he was found. Then, nearly 4 years after Leslie was killed, there was finally a major break. In July 2024, Eric Rangel Ibarra was arrested in Mexico. He remained in custody there before being returned to Nevada in August 2025, where he was booked into the Clark County Detention Center on charges including open murder and destroying or concealing evidence. In September 2025, he pleaded not guilty, and a trial was scheduled for August 24, 2026. As of the latest reporting, he remains in custody without bail. What makes this case hit so hard is not just the brutality of what happened, but the betrayal underneath it. Leslie didn't disappear with a stranger. She spent her final night with someone who had been around her family for years, someone familiar enough that going out with him didn't set off alarm bells at first. The surveillance footage from that night is so disturbing because it captures the exact point where normal life ends and something unforgivable begins. One moment, it is just a late night out between two people who know each other. The next, it becomes the silent record of a young woman never making it home. And that is what her family has been left with for years. Not just grief, but the unbearable knowledge that the last images of Leslie alive show her trusting the wrong person, walking into a house where whatever happened next would take everything from her. At least the footage in Leslie's case helped investigators understand what happened. The next video, however, raises only more questions that no one has been able to answer. The following video was recorded by a surveillance camera inside a residential building. Very little information is known about the clip itself, other than the fact that it was captured in a building where a young girl lives with her family. At the beginning of the footage, the girl can be seen playing near a staircase. Beneath the stairs, there is a small storage-like room, partially hidden in shadow. The girl repeatedly looks toward that space, focusing her attention on it, as if she senses something unusual. At first glance, however, nothing appears out of the ordinary. That's exactly what her parents thought as well. But after reviewing the footage more carefully, they noticed something that left them deeply disturbed. When watching the video closely, it becomes clear why the girl seemed hesitant to approach the room. From the darkness beneath the stairs, a disembodied hand appears, slowly reaching outward as if attempting to lure the child closer. The hand seems to emerge from the shadows, remains visible for only a few seconds, and then disappears just as suddenly as it appeared. A short time later, a cat walks toward the girl, but immediately becomes uneasy, stopping short and refusing to go anywhere near the room. Whatever was captured in that moment clearly unsettled not only the child, but also the animal, and later the family reviewing the footage. As with many mysterious clips like this, no one has been able to offer a clear explanation for what appears on camera. Until someone can provide an answer, viewers are left to decide for themselves what they believe is hiding in the shadows of that small room. And that takes us to this next case, where security cameras would record a brutal act of violence that shocked an entire country. On July 22, 2018, what should have been nothing more than a birthday night out in Guarapuava, Paraná, turned into one of the most infamous femicide cases in Brazil, largely because so much of the violence was captured on security cameras. Tatiana Spitzner was 29 years old, a lawyer, and by all accounts, someone who was warm, social, and deeply loved by the people around her. She had been married for a little over 5 years to Luis Felipe Manvaler, a university biology lecturer whose public image, at least from the outside, did not immediately suggest the brutality he would later be accused of. That night was Luis Felipe's birthday, and the couple had gone out to celebrate with friends. Somewhere between getting ready, arriving late, drinking, and the tension that had reportedly already been building inside the marriage, the evening began to crack. Later, reporting and witness testimony would paint a picture of a relationship marked not by romance, but by control, humiliation, jealousy, and violence that had been escalating behind closed doors long before the night of Tatiana's death. Friends later said she had spoken about wanting a divorce and had described feeling afraid of him. When the couple returned to the Golden Garden building, where they lived, the cameras in the parking garage and elevator began recording a sequence that would horrify the country. Footage showed Luis Felipe attacking Tatiana before they even fully got out of the car, then continuing the assault in the garage as she tried to get away from him. She ran toward the elevator, apparently desperate to escape, but he caught up with her and forced his way inside. There, trapped in that enclosed space with nowhere left to run, she was thrown against the walls, pulled back when she tried to get out, and overpowered again and again while the camera kept recording. Those elevator images would later become some of the most widely shared and deeply disturbing domestic violence footage in Brazil. After the elevator stopped on their floor, the cameras lost sight of what happened inside the apartment itself, but the evidence later told investigators that the violence had not ended there. According to prosecutors and forensic findings, Tatiana was strangled inside the apartment and was already dead before her body went over the balcony. The autopsy found injuries consistent with asphyxia, including marks on her neck and a fractured hyoid bone, and investigators concluded that the fall was staged to look like suicide. That conclusion was reinforced by the lack of physiological signs that would normally suggest panic or awareness during a fatal fall. What happened next only made the case more chilling. Exterior cameras captured Tatiana's body falling to the pavement, and then, moments later, showed Luis Felipe leaving the building, retrieving her body from the sidewalk, and carrying it back inside. He was then seen taking the elevator with her body, and later returning with a cloth to wipe what appeared to be blood from the elevator area. It was not the behavior of a man in shock. It looked like the behavior of someone trying to control a scene he had already destroyed. As police and forensic teams rebuilt the timeline, more details emerged about the marriage itself. Friends said Tatiana had confided in them about his jealousy, his insults, and the way he tried to control what she wore, how she spent money, and even basic household decisions. Some witnesses said he humiliated her, demeaned her, and isolated her emotionally. The broader case quickly became part of a national conversation in Brazil about femicide, intimate partner violence, and the warning signs people often see too late. In the months after Tatiana's murder, demonstrations were held in her memory, and her case came to symbolize a larger epidemic of violence against women. Luis Felipe was arrested shortly after the crime, and although he admitted to assaulting Tatiana, he maintained that she had taken her own life by jumping from the balcony. The forensic evidence pointed the other way, and so did the surveillance footage, the witness statements, and the pattern of abuse investigators said had been present throughout the relationship. In May 2021, after a trial that drew enormous public attention, he was convicted of qualified homicide with the aggravating factors of femicide, cruel means, and futile motive, as well as procedural fraud for trying to alter the crime scene. He was sentenced to 31 years, 9 months, and 18 days in prison, along with a fine and civil damages to Tatiana's parents. The legal fight did not end there. His defense challenged the verdict, but the conviction remained standing, and in June 2025, the final appeal on the sentence was rejected, effectively preserving the punishment imposed after trial. Later, in January 2026, a court also blocked him from inheriting Tatiana's estate, citing the consequences of his criminal conviction in her death. Tatiana's legacy did not disappear with the verdict. In 2019, the state of Paraná established July 22nd, the date of her death, as the state day to combat femicide, turning the day that ended her life into a permanent reminder of the lives that can still be saved when warning signs are taken seriously. Her sister also helped turn the case into a platform for awareness, keeping Tatiana's name tied not only to a horrifying crime, but to a larger demand that violence against women be recognized before it reaches the point of no return. And that may be the part that stays with people the longest. Not only the footage itself, though that is hard enough to forget, but the fact that Tatiana was visibly trying to survive. She ran. She tried to get away. She pushed the elevator button. She fought to put distance between herself and the man attacking her. The cameras captured that struggle in a way words alone never could, and because of that, this case became more than just another headline. It became a brutal, undeniable record of what domestic violence can look like in its final stage, when control turns lethal and the person trying to escape runs out of places to go. And that takes us to the final clip in this video, one which might be the strangest of them all. This CCTV footage initially appears to show an ordinary public area, with people moving through the space and nothing out of the ordinary taking place. But within seconds, something happens that leaves viewers completely puzzled. Without any warning, a man suddenly drops out of the open air and crashes directly onto a bench below. The moment is so sudden that it almost looks unreal. 1 second the bench is empty, and the next, the man appears on screen mid-fall before slamming down onto it. As far as I could find online, there were no rooftops, balconies, or nearby structures above the bench that could clearly explain where he might have fallen from. The impact itself looks extremely violent, the kind of fall that should normally leave someone seriously injured or unable to move. Yet what happens next only deepens the mystery. Just seconds later, the man calmly sits up, stands to his feet, dusts off his clothes, and simply walks away as if nothing unusual had happened. Even more strangely, it seems that if there were people nearby, none of them visibly reacted to the fall. No one rushes over to help him, and no one appears startled by what just happened, almost as if his sudden arrival went completely unnoticed. Because of that, the clip quickly sparked debate online. Some viewers believe he must have fallen from somewhere just outside the camera's frame, while others argue the footage makes it look as though he appeared from nowhere entirely. Whatever the explanation may be, the moment captured in this clip continues to leave viewers wondering exactly where that man came from. Now that was all for today, folks. If you enjoyed these horrifying clips, click to see more on the video on screen.